Hey, welcome to the West Coast Biased. I'm Andrew Nemec, joined as always by Jason Suke and Nemec. You must be as happy as can be because I know you root for Vikings and Viking-like people, and I've never seen an athlete who is more of the embodiment of a Viking than Erling Haaland, who is undeniably the best player in the world. Can we just start there? I don't watch a ton of soccer. I watch everything to do with the World Cup, but we're seeing these records where it's like Mbappe has the same number of goals as Haaland in his international career. Oh, he's played twice as many games. The dude is undeniable. What an incredible win for Norway this weekend.
Oh, we're rowing the Viking ship. Don't worry about that. We broke out the Viking axe today in honor of our Scandinavian brothers. I mean, come on. This sits on my desk 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. But, hey, during special events, as if the Vikings claiming the World Cup isn't special enough, we got to break out one of those. Yeah, we scull, we row. It's phenomenal. It's cool. The World Cup has just been amazing.
Fantastic.
It's everything I could want it to be. And as cool it is to see the United States do so good, the cool thing about the World Cup to me is it hasn't been centered around America. It hasn't been centered around Norway. It hasn't been centered around anything. It's just been centered around good vibes. Scotland, who I lived in Scotland for 8 months. Scotland captured my heart probably first, and they had no real chance of doing anything. But they captured our hearts. My jiu-jitsu instructors are all Brazilian, and so to see what it means to them has been amazing. Again, being Scandinavian, my mom was born and raised in Sweden. 4 years ago when Iceland made it, it was incredible. And then to see the Norwegians, to see the Azteca situation down with Mexico and how hard they fought against England. It's been amazing. And the thing that I was kind of worried about, and now look, I'll be honest, I'm not the world's biggest soccer fan. I go to a lot of Timbers and Thorns games, but that's just because I like to go drinking with my buddy. But I'm a live soccer fan. Whenever I travel, and I've been fortunate enough to go around the world, and I've seen international games in Scotland and in the Netherlands, and I've seen it in London, and I've seen it in Spain, and I've seen it in Portugal, and so I really Italy. I always love going to soccer games because I think you really get to see a lot of people's culture. Yep. Soccer is a culturally significant game around the world, and I was a little worried with our political climate here. I was worried that the World Cup might shine a bad light on some of our warts. And everyone has warts. Let's not act like all the Norwegians or all the Scotland people get along when they're back home. It's like everyone else, but ours certainly feel pretty divided right now. And I was worried that when the World Cup came here, that it would show the worst of us. And it didn't. I think it's shown the best of us. And when you see people from all over the world that are coming here and they don't care about who you voted for, and they've even said, like, you hear a lot of fan bases that, hey, we had a lot of preconceived notions, especially what it was going to be like in the Midwest and the South. And it's been incredible. And those little commie bastards up in the upper left-hand corner, us in Seattle, became the center of the soccer universe and embraced the flag, embraced the stars and stripes. And that was incredible. Yep. And, to hear the announcer say, I've never seen an environment like this, and that coming from a place that supposedly isn't very patriotic where we live up in the left-hand corner. It has been everything I could want it to be and then some. And it has shown the better angels of sports. Look, there's a lot of crap that goes on in sports, and there's a lot of negativity, but God, sometimes it can really be a positive thing. And I just think it's been incredible to see our country embrace other cultures, to see other cultures embrace us, to see us be relevant, to see all these different storylines. I guarantee you that Norway and Scotland and some of these places, Cape Verde, the goalkeeper from Cape Verde started the World Cup, I think, with like 25, 50,000, something like that, Instagram followers. And now he's like got 20 something million.
40 years old, and his name in his country, his nickname is Little Grandma.
Yeah.
from when he was a kid, not because he's an old player
Yeah.
now. And he's never played for huge amounts of money. It's
No.
possible the MLS brings him over as a backup just for marketing.
Changed
He
his life.
blew up.
You know, he won the World Cup. You know, his team may not have, but he won the World Cup. And so it's been amazing. And you know, we feel like in US soccer, like soccer here is never going to be football. It's just not. Okay. Football is the 800-pound gorilla. But, you know, in my lifetime, I've seen an evolution of women's sports. I've seen an evolution of the rise of MMA, and it killed boxing. At one point, baseball and boxing were considered the two biggest sports in America. That's gone by the wayside.
Yep.
In the 70s and 80s, the NBA was irrelevant, and then you had a rise in the 90s and 2000s, and then it dipped back down, and now it's trying to come back up a little bit. So there's ebbs and flows. And we've been hearing for 30 years that soccer is coming, and more kids play soccer than any other sport, and you know, it's the biggest sport in the world, and you keep hearing this, and you know, it's been a slow burn, and this is the same true with the WNBA, right? It took a quarter century for anyone to give a crap, but now people care, and numbers, and they're getting, you know, money being dumped into it, and I feel like this generation of the U.S. soccer team is gaining a foothold, and I feel like this World Cup has changed U.S. soccer forever, regardless of what happens against Belgium. This has changed, and I think you have people that are going to be following, you know, some of these players that they've seen in the World Cup. They're going to follow them in their Premier League teams, the Bundesliga teams, or if someone comes over to the MLS, and you know, Messi's already here in the MLS, and so I really think that this will be a turning point. I don't think that it ever, you know, at least in my lifetime, becomes the dominant sport, but soccer is no longer an also-ran. You have billion-dollar teams in the MLS. You're playing to pack stadiums. More and more international players, maybe even towards the end of their career, but they're still coming here, and there's money to be made here. And this has been amazing. This has been as good a tournament as and we're only halfway through it. I can't say enough good things. And it's changed my soccer fandom. I went from a live soccer casual fan. This changed something in me. I am sitting down for the first time, and I'm making appointment viewing, and I'm watching games from the very beginning to the very end, and my family's sitting down and watching them with me. And I'm rooting for Norway, and I'm finding myself being like, God, come on, Cape Verde, like come on, one time. And I've never done that ever. Yeah. I've never done it with a soccer game on TV, only in person. So I think this is not just another tournament, and we see it with sometimes in hockey, and you know, where there's a big Stanley Cup or maybe the Four Nations tournament where you get a little spike and then it kind of goes back. I don't think that. I think this is going to become a permanent foothold, and will raise the bar for the way we view about men's soccer in the United States. And I'm tickled to death. And the other cool thing I really like is I haven't, and we'll see how this goes, but I haven't heard one thing yet about those players don't represent me. The women's team has been incredible for decades, and yet it's pretty polarizing with a lot of people because they've taken some political stances, and good for them. You know, speak your voice. But you have people that root against their own women in this country because they don't see them as political allies. And hockey was amazing, and hockey quickly turned off a phone call, and because the director of the FBI decided to go into the locker room, and the players didn't have a say in that. I thought the players were put in a very uncomfortable situation, whether they supported it or not. You don't have a choice. Right. The guy in the FBI wants to show up, he's going to show up. And then that quickly ruined that. And so far, hold on.
Well, it's coming. Let's be realistic. If America makes it to an Elite Eight, if they make it to a semifinal, Trump's going to go, and then that's going to be a story, and that's going to be unfortunate. But I mean, to your point, they've largely avoided that hurdle thus far. This has been in America right around the 4th of July. Everything in the world was pointing to, we are going to have some sort of protest or something. And we haven't had that. And I think there's a lot in this tournament that's been wonderful. One, it being set in America and showing at least the best of America, to your point, that we have right now. You know, this has brought people together. I think expanding the tournament was huge. It gave people a chance, countries, to win a knockout round, a knockout round game for the first time in their country's history, or even compete in one because they expanded the tournament. And that's been huge. Look at the teams. Look how meaningful it is for America, for Canada, for Mexico, for Cape Verde to have these for Norway to have these platforms. Even if Norway had lost, that would have been massive that Holland made it and scored the goals he did. This is the first World Cup ever, and part of it's because of expansion and part of it's because the stars have really shown. This is the first World Cup ever where 3 different players have 7 goals at any point in the tournament. And we're not to the quarters yet. We're not down to the final 8, final 4 where that's going on quite yet. We're not there yet. And I think that's really incredible today. I mean, so many different records. Cape Verde and their keeper today, Harry Kane was the first World Cup player ever to score on a penalty and then give up a penalty goal because of his foul in the box. There's been a ton of stuff that's been historic in this. And I think a few different things. Americans like stars, and soccer doesn't really traditionally lend itself to that. You don't necessarily expect your star to score, certainly not the American stars, to score every game. Holland scoring 2 goals seemingly every game. Mbappe scoring 2 goals for France, seemingly every game. Harry Kane's who's gonna end up being knighted, seemingly scores every game. Messi is scoring every game. So we're seeing stars. America's relevant, and then we're seeing the best of all these cultures. And this is what America, I thought we were. This is where I thought we were, and we found out over the last 10 years, 15 years that we still have a long way to go. In some ways, this has been refreshing that, hey, this is still in there. We still at our best moments embrace other countries who rise in big moments. Everyone was rooting for Cape Verde. I think a lot of people wanted to see Norway row the boat right after they win. It feels like maybe PJ Fleck is somewhere involved in that to make a college football tie with his row the boat thing. That's what he's talking about, right? So just a really incredible start to this tournament. My daughter's best friend his family's Chilean. And we took her to a Spanish speaking preschool. So a lot of her friends are Spanish speakers. And because of that, their families are from South America. And her best friend's mom was in Chile, then moved to Argentina. They are massive. Argentina, like absolutely shut it down. Do not call us. Argentina's on. Messi scored his first goal of the World Cup, and they broke down in tears. It was like, this is our God. This is our hero. It's been really incredible, and there's so many different scenes that I could go to. This England-Mexico game that we just got done with, England wins playing with 10 men, 10 and 11, if you don't know, for the last 15 minutes and has to just hang on for dear life. It was unbelievable. Jude Bellingham's a young star for England, scores 2 goals in like a minute and a half right before half, and then Mexico goes down and scores. There's just been a lot of intrigue that we haven't traditionally seen in soccer. I think we're so used to, as Americans, like 1-0, and I've never heard of the guy that's scoring. And I think there's a lot of different factors. As I said, the U.S. still being in it, the Stars scoring, where it's being on American soil. The stars are aligning for this World Cup to be truly meaningful. And oh my goodness, Suke, if somehow, some way, America, and they've got a decent shot. It's like a coin flip game against Belgium. If they can find a way to win and keep this going, that'll be incredible. But my last point with any of this is, regardless of what happens with the U.S., I think of it as like the winter. To me, my intrigue level with the World Cup tends to be similar to the Winter Olympics. Any Americans in this? No. Okay. Is America going to be good? No. Well, then I'm not that in. It's not the Summer Olympics where America's going to lead the way and all our stars, our 100-meter stars and our basketball stars are all there. It's like the Winter Olympics. Even if America gets eliminated, I'm going to watch the 100%. Final 4 here. I'm going to watch the championship game religiously. I've watched everything, even if I'm, doing dishes or writing or whatever. I've got every World Cup game on.
Yeah. I watched every minute of the Holland game, Brazil today, and I watched every minute of Mexico and England. And it didn't matter. So, like, I'm pulling for the U.S., but again, if they get eliminated tomorrow against Belgium, okay, I'll be bummed. I bought a U.S. soccer jersey. Hopefully it gets here in time. I don't know if it gets here for. I just got it. I didn't get a player or anything like that. I bought one of the. I didn't buy the stripes. I bought the stars, the blue one with.
Yeah, that's a nice one. I like.
And I just had 19 put on it because that's my favorite number. Stevie Eiserman's 19, who's Canadian, by the way. That's my son's name is Eiserman. So I just threw 19 on it, but I didn't put a name on it. I didn't want to put a player, and I'm not going to put my name on the back of a soccer jersey. So I just went with.
We're not there yet. We're almost
not there yet. I went with 19. But yeah, to me, I mean, obviously I want the United States, but I'm not going to say it's inconsequential. I will watch. This tournament has wrote me in, and I think there's great storylines even without the United States. And I just really hope, and I implore, and I said this when because hockey is my favorite sport. So the Four Nations tournament and then the Olympics, I had this level of interest. In fact, these three tournaments, the Four Nations in which was, if you don't know, that was the kind of the all-star tournament last year with the NHL, and then obviously the Olympics this year, the Winter Olympics, Canada and in the United States playing for gold. And then now this World Cup. Honestly, I have enjoyed these three tournaments as much as any Super Bowl, as much as any college football playoff over the last couple of years. This has been any NBA finals. This is as enjoyable to me as anything I've seen in sports in recent memory. So whether the U.S. is in or not, it won't change that. But yeah, I just employ everyone out there, just put the other crap aside. If someone decides to interject themselves, and look, he's the president of the United States, and anyone that listens to my show knows that I'm not a huge fan. But he's the president. And if the president decides that he's going to call that team or he's going to show up at the game, they don't get a choice whether or not they tell him no. And don't let him take that from you. And if you are a Trump guy, then by all means, embrace it. Put your arms around it, right? That's your guy, and he's the president, and he won. And by all means, you're probably going to think it's awesome that he shows up to the game or that he calls the team to congratulate him or give him a motivational speech, whatever. But if that's not your guy, that doesn't mean this can't be your team. We can't start like booing the American team every time they touch the ball if Trump's in the building. I agree. That just doesn't change it. That's the beauty part about sports is I spent my life in locker rooms, right? And I'm a big Viking-looking white guy. And I played with a lot of black guys, and I played with a lot of Polynesians, and I played with a lot of Mormons, and then I played with a lot of Mormons that played with a lot of non-Mormons, and I played with guys that were atheists, and I played with guys that were Jewish, and I played with guys that were foul-mouthed and degenerates, and guys like to gamble, and guys like to womanize, and guys that were great family guys. And the beauty part about locker rooms is you can put all that shit aside, and you can just be part of a team. Yeah. Right? You really can. I played with some wonderful guys who were just great dudes to me. But I didn't see eye to eye with 90% of the way they live their lives. And I didn't have to. And that's the thing. Like, you don't have to agree with every single thing, but these guys represent us. Look around you right now at the World Cup, and what the main story of this is, it's world pride. Yeah. And it's people sharing culture. And it's embraced, and it's beautiful. There's a great commercial running in the World Cup about when countries come together, and it's like, rock and roll music was formed when this country brought this here, and jiu-jitsu was formed when the Japanese came to Brazil, and it's this whole thing where they use like 7 examples about one, Italy coming here and 2 cultures sharing something, and then something great coming out of it, right? That can be here in the United States too. You can get some guys that are Republican on the team, and some guys that are Democrats, and some that don't give a crap and are apolitical, or someone's a libertarian or whatever it is. And you get some Christian. You get our best player right now is a Nigerian kind of. He was his mom was forced to give birth here, and now he's a citizen by birthright, and that's been a big controversial thing. Wait, careful saying his mom was forced to give birth here. Well, she was. They were all like on a vacation, or they were here, and she couldn't get home in time. Labor, and they wouldn't let her fly home. They wouldn't let her fly. But she wasn't forced to give birth. No. But she gave birth to her son. Yes, right here. Like, yes. There is so many, and that's a big topic right now, right? And yet here we are with this guy who's captured the hearts of the country that's now going to be allowed to play. And he comes from this very different background. Yeah. Right. You look around, like the France players, I think it's like 60% of the France team has Nigerian roots. Germany had a bunch of guys with African roots because so many of those European countries colonized. the Middle East and the African countries. And now some of those guys have grown up living in that country for generations and generations. So you're seeing it where it's no longer just, people that were, that all look exactly the same. You're seeing more multiculturalism across all the teams. I mean, God, we had a black guy, my better half is Japanese. We got a half black American named Suzuki that's in goal for Japan.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to get to the
Dude,
the African American keeper
it's awesome. It's awesome. Actually, he's an African Japanese. He's not even African American.
That's right. He wasn't here. Right.
So it's just it's freaking awesome to see this. And so if everyone else in the world can put this horse crap aside, why can't we? Do not let political strife take this away. This is an awesome moment for our country, and it's an awesome moment from sports. And don't let someone who lives 3,000 miles away from you that sits in a house that doesn't care about what you think of him, and don't let him ruin this for you.
Yeah,
he will not take this from me. This is not going to happen. That is my team, and I am embracing it. And I hope they beat Belgium, and I will raise a flag and I will celebrate. And I just think it's great. And so that's just my thing is everyone seems to be enjoying this right now, and we're having a moment. And someone during the mayor of New York said this during the championships Nick parade, which I thought, that it was a really good speech. You should go listen to it. It's like 8 minutes long.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I thought he did a really great job. But he said something. He said, normally it takes tragedy to bring a city together and a people together. And that's true, right? When something happens and there's a war or something gets bombed or a natural disaster or whatever, it brings out our better angels and we all come together. And he said, for the last 2 months, I've watched New York, which may be the most diverse city in the country, right? I mean, you want to talk about a melting pot. Welcome to New York. It's Ellis Island, for God's sakes.
Sure.
And he said that, and it is true. He said, I have watched New York come together, not over tragedy, but over this team.
Yep.
And I have been saying for a couple years now that I'm waiting. I'm waiting for something that can kind of bridge that gap and kind of just be like some national pride. I'm jealous. I'm jealous when I see countries with overwhelming national pride. And it sucks that I feel like we've lost that a little bit. I think we've lost it a lot. And I'm hoping that tomorrow, when that's up in Seattle, like I said, those commie lefters up there in the upper left-hand corner, when 70,000 of them get together and create the best environment in sports right now, and we get a Beastquake Part 2, and the U.S. goes on and to play in the round of 8, the quarters. I just hope that it's not about left and right and anything else. It's just that it is a country of 330 million people that celebrates our differences and rallies around a group of 20-something men that are representing us with stars and stripes, and that we can fly that flag and feel good about it. Yep. That you can wave a flag outside your house and not having someone judge you based on the fact that you're proud of where you're from and proud to wave a flag. I think this is bigger than sports, and I think we're having a moment, and I don't want it spoiled.
Yeah, I think it's the first time in quite some time, tomorrow, just in general, that if I see someone flying an American flag off their car, I won't automatically think I understand their politics, or I knowing that some people might be triggered by that flag, or knowing what that flag means. Yeah. There's nothing to have it be triggered. It's like, okay, this is about our country and soccer. And I think that's kind of a cool thing that we're all rallying around.
Everyone else gets to do it. Why can't we?
Yeah.
We sit there. I've seen so many people online be like, man, the Scots are so cool, and the Norwegians. And I'm like, we can do it.
Yeah. In fact, we do that stuff in college sports a lot.
Yes.
We've had that tradition for years. It's that, one, the American team hasn't been great, and two, we've been kind of torn apart by our own politics. Yeah. I think there is a piece of soccer that is about to come to college football. And I don't know if you've heard this, the behind the scenes chatter. And I was the guy years ago who said what everybody's saying is the Big Ten and the SEC are going to control things. Teams are going to kind of shift over to them. They're going to be the two mega conferences, and everyone else is going to be below, and they're going to make a lot of the decisions. They're going to have all the power. I said that several years ago. What I'm hearing right now, and other people have said this, is that we are going to have a situation where we have a transfer market, very, very similar to soccer. So I'm just going to give examples people know from the West Coast. If Cal develops Jaron Kiawe Sangapolutele, that quarterback that's there that's going to be a true sophomore, and he's phenomenal, and maybe his deal there is $500,000 a year. I'm sure they upped it, but maybe it's $500,000 a year.
True.
And he transfers, and he's going to transfer to Florida State. Florida State not only has to agree to a contract with JKS, they also have to pay a fee that replenishes Cal's roster. So if a guy you sign is worth $100,000, and then Oregon State gets a guy and they pay him $100,000, and he has a monster true freshman year, he's an all-conference freshman, and Clemson comes in and pays him, $600,000 a year. They also have to pay something like, and the numbers aren't set at all, a third of that salary, that transfer fee to Oregon State. That is not just replenishing your money. I'm not giving you back your $100,000. You developed this kid, you paid $100,000 for him. I have to pay you at least $300,000 plus what I'm going to pay him for him to transfer. I am hearing that is coming. Now, I don't think it's a slam dunk. It happens in the next year, but there are too many people involved in the way this thing is turning, and everybody thinks of the top 20 teams and really like the top 12 teams and thinks about the Oregons of the world and the Michigans and the Ohio States of the world, Alabama, Georgia, Texas Tech, who load up on transfers. Every other person involved in this is like, we're recruiting these guys and developing them for you guys to make your title run. And that is the case at the D2 level, where you hear coaches being upset that, like, we developed this kid all the way through. I'm glad he gets to go up, but we just developed our star quarterback to make a run this year, and now our team's not going to be good because we have a freshman behind him. You're hearing that at the NAIA, D3, FCS, everyone in those levels, group of 6, they're all frustrated that, fine, the kid's got to move on. They're going to get paid. We get it. We're cool with that. Good for them. That's why we brought them here, to have them succeed here, and then if they're good enough, to move on. But then there's no benefit for us if we develop and they leave. But what happens if you create a transfer fee or you have a transfer market is, if you hit on 3 or 4 players that you paid $100,000, $200,000 a year for, and they become $2 million players and you get $1 million each for those guys, you've just added $2.7 million to what you can pay. Go get 27 more $100,000 guys. And that's the way this is going to start working, I believe. In the future, not the immediate future, not the very near future, but I do think this is coming, and you're starting to hear more than ever. I am starting to hear coaches say, just so you know, this is the way it's going to work in a while. Do you buy that?
Yeah.
Do you think it's happening? Are you hearing any of that?
Yeah. Look, there is so much stuff happening right now. From obviously the congressional thing, which I still never bought that, the Save College Sports Act. I still think that thing's dead in the water, although I'll never say never. I don't think there's anything to that. Something needs to change, and some form of transfer fee system seems to make sense. And in some ways you already have it. I mean, that's what Mensa had to do with Duke and Miami. Someone had to buy out his contract with Duke, and Duke didn't necessarily try to fight it. They just wanted their money back. This would be something punitive on top of that, right? This was the Damon Williams thing. UW went to him and was like, well, you're not leaving. You signed a contract, so you can leave, but you're not getting paid. Plain and simple. So, I mean, already you're seeing, people that say that these things aren't enforceable. That's a lie, because we've seen them be enforced. We've seen Damon Williams be told, you're not going anywhere unless you want to play for free. Right. We've seen Duke have to, we've seen Duke be compensated. So could I see a world in which that happens? Yeah. Could I see a world where people just sign 1-year contracts that aren't breakable, like we've already seen? But it would make sense. Of all the stuff that gets thrown out there, I think a lot of it is silly. And I still think until the players have a say in how this actually goes, I'm not certain how much of this is legal. I mean, this goes back to it. Like, we can think the transfer thing, and by the way, I think what you're saying makes sense, and I think coaches will think this makes sense. But will the courts? I mean, at the end of the day, and that's why I just put a pin in everything.
Sure.
If the courts say it's illegal, then it doesn't matter. It has to be enforceable. And that's the whole problem right now, is that nothing seems to be enforceable other than apparently the gambling thing. Apparently the gambling thing's the one thing. So could I see a transfer thing? Yes, but I think it would have to be conference to conference, because I think ultimately what I'm hearing, and again, take this with a grain of salt, because you hear a lot of crazy crap out there. What I hear is that eventually you will have things that are kind of collectively bargained to a lesser extent, but it will be with conferences.
Yes.
Like, how do you collectively bargain 100 and whatever it is? What is it, like 128 Division I schools, something like that? And no offense to the little engine that could playing in the MAC, no one from the SEC is going to collectively bargain with you. It's just not going to happen. Which is why I think that Save College Sport Act is dumb. That you're trying to say that the SEC and the Big Ten are the same as the Mountain West, the Pac-12, and the ACC. You're not. And they're not going to go
the same rules, but I have $100 million and you've got $2,000.
Exactly. So stop it. But I could see a world where, much like the European soccer model, because what you're saying, like with the transfer fee thing, that is true, because it can go from league to league, right? Like the EPL and the Liga and Bundesliga, those are all very independent leagues, but they still get together and they play.
Yep.
They still independently governed, but they still get together and play in championships, and they still can transfer players. Major League Baseball has this, right? So when you play in the Nippon League, which is the Japanese league, you're still bound by Major League Baseball rules. It's not like there's an international draft, and Major League Baseball handles how those players come in, and there's a bidding process, the same thing. So if you're like, when Shohei Ohtani wanted to come over, teams had to pay the Japanese league for the right to negotiate with him. So it's a bidding process. So again, there's two leagues that have nothing to do with each other, still having to pay to bargain. So I could see a world where, and I again, how this works, I'm not 100% sure, but I could see a world where the Big 12 has its own deal, the SEC has its own deal, and they're governed and collectively bargain in their own way, but they still have best practices, or they have a signed agreement between the leagues that this is how this is going to go. So if I'm in the SEC and I would like a Big 12 player, or vice versa, even though our leagues are independently governed and we've agreed on our own rules, they're still close enough in context to where we have an agreement where if one of my guys goes to yours, here's how this process goes. So yes, I do think that some form, and I think it's a little more complex than kind of what just the basic, there's a transfer, fee rule.
Agreed. Yes. None of the numbers are sorted out at this point.
No, I think that would be the thing that makes some kind of sense, because this won't stop until everyone comes together and says, these are our best practices, these are our rules, these are enforceable. And I just think that's going to be a lot easier to get done on a conference level with 12 or 15 or 16 teams than it is. I just don't see a world where you get everyone to get together and come to the table. And the moment that does, I think the SEC and the Big Ten immediately flip you the bird and just go on their own.
Right.
And so
if that fee gets too big, the Big Ten and SEC will like, see you in court. You can't make your players stay. And if they want to come here, they're going to come here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you can't already start. Again, we've already moved to somewhat enforceable contracts, right? If I give you $3 million and you sign away your rights, your name, image, and likeness to me at my school, and I said, I have you for a year, and you try to leave, there are punishments. There is fees to that. You can't just leave and go get paid somewhere else. And we learned that. We've seen it in 2 high-profile cases. So is it the Wild Wild West? Yes. Is it getting less Wild Wild Westy? Yes. Because the Big Ten, especially, the Big Ten has lawyers now that are working with their schools to form these contracts. So I know for a fact that like when UW or Oregon or someone like that signs one of their players to an NIL deal, the Big Ten's lawyers do get involved in that, and that they like have a standard boilerplate agreement that they give, and then the school can have their attorneys kind of work in the fine lines there. But you're not seeing this world where guys sign a contract and then 2 days later leave. That's not happening.
Right.
Like it's not. So some of that is fear mongering. Yeah, year to year, I'm not certain how you change that other than getting kids to sign multi-year agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what kid wants to sign multi-year agreements right now, but you are seeing it enforced where the year-to-year thing, it is getting harder and the transfer windows are getting smaller. So they are starting to kind of rein it in a little bit. And I think over the next 3 years or so, this will naturally, it'll morph into something. It'll be ugly.
Yeah.
It'll feel itself out. It'll get ugly. But yes, long-winded answer there. I've heard some of those whispers, and I think in general terms, some form of that will be in place over the next 18 months.
We heard whispers for a long time about what the Pac-12 media rights deal would be. And you and I both said it's going to be really bad. It's going to be really, really bad. And got a little pushback, but for the most part, I think people understand. I think the Pac-12's done a pretty nice job of rebranding for the most part. I think Teresa Gould stepped in it for the first time, the Pac-12 commissioner, for the first time in her tenure, by saying essentially that it's inappropriate to reveal media revenue figures for their rights deal. Listen, at some point you got to bite the bullet and just tell people what the deal is. There's been anticipation. No one believes you. If your number was 40 million a year, which would be absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's 5 times what we anticipated, 4 times what we anticipated. She would have said the number. The reason it's inappropriate is because it's embarrassing. And I think she mishandled that for the first time because it became laughable. I mean, if you give a number, okay, the number's bad. It's 7 to 9 million a year. That's bad. It's a bad number. We expect a bad number. Don't hide behind it's inappropriate. Everyone gives their numbers. It's bragging rights. It's how you beat your chest to your numbers. The Big Ten is all excited about their numbers. The SEC is all excited about their numbers. That's not how the game works. That's not, we find out exactly how much channels pay for the Super Bowl. We find out how much Fox pays for the World Cup. All those numbers become public. So you're kind of dying on a hill of like, we don't really discuss numbers. Yeah, we do. As a society, this has been legislated. We talk about it. You won't talk about it because you're ashamed. And shame on you because we all kind of know. So just let the cat out of the bag here.
Well, rich people like to talk about how much money they make. Poor people don't. So, I mean, that's
fair.
At the end of the day, like you can get someone that closes if you get some CEO and his pack, and he signs some, big deal, we get to hear about what his salary was, or when Elon Musk becomes a trillionaire, or, when someone signs a massive deal, we love to hear about that. But no one wants to talk about what the guy working, unloading freight makes. It just doesn't. So that's all. You're right that when you answer the question that way, that means that the deal sucks, and we knew it was going to suck. And you can't. I feel bad for him, but like you can't. I don't know how you spin that any other way, because how do you release a number? Let's say it's 8 million, 9 million, 10 million, 12 million, whatever it is.
Okay,
right?
So over under 11 million per school.
Yeah, I think it's my understanding. It's probably right around there. I would say, if gun to my head, I'd probably say under. I think it's probably closer to 10 than it is 11. But when you're trying to build excitement for a league, and like I said, I think they've done a decent job of rebranding it, and I think they're going to play competitive football and all that. It's hard. I don't envy her for having to release a statement saying new media deal, pays us 9.8 million a year, when the SEC and the Big Ten are out there talking about eventually climbing to 100 million. So it's a tough. It's a tough spot. It just is. I'll say what, it's better than the old Mountain West paid out like 3.5 and 4. So I mean, it's better than that. Like it stinks. There's no other way around it. It stinks. But that's not their fault. You knew it was going to stink. And that's just the reality of the situation. So I get why she's doing it. Is it a bad look? Sure. But I wouldn't know how to handle that. I think it's awkward all the way around. So I have some sympathy for the Pac-12.
I don't even know where to go with this topic. I just know I want your opinion on it. I have absolutely been baffled, bamboozled, befuddled by the conversation around the fourth B, the Blazers, in the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks. Dude, I don't know if people are in their feelings. I don't know. Like, we've got media people apologizing. We've got media people asking who are the most obnoxious media people in the market publicly, and then responding to that. We've got people saying the Blazers, there's like racial undertones to people not wanting to spend on Jaylen Brown. I don't buy that at all. I just, it's been gross. What are we doing? We got into trade topics and it just went to like, well, I hate the media and I hate the owner. And I felt like, because you go into like free agency and the trade deadline. I felt like the dude who walks in, that gif, when the dude walks in with the pizzas and the whole room's inflamed, is on fire. That's what I felt like this last couple of weeks. I was like, oh, Ja, I mean, he's got issues off the court, but you're trying to unload the Jeremy Grant contract. And worst case, he's a distraction. You send him home. Jeremy Grant wasn't going to be the difference between a title and not a title. So you take a flyer on a, depreciated asset and hope that he returns to two-time All-Star form. And then it just was like, and I was kind of embarrassed for media people. I was embarrassed for our city. I thought the level of discussion around all of it was incredibly low. I just thought the entire conversation was so the opposite of how I feel about the World Cup. Let's put it that way. Just gross.
Yeah. It's been pretty bad. And we've talked about it on my show a bunch of times. And I think some of the coverage has been ridiculous. I think some of the, look, I'm not calling anyone out. You can say whatever you want. Like, we're all big boys here. I think there's been agendas. I think there's been narrative slants that have been ridden really hard. I think there's some clickbaity crap. I think fans have been irrational. I think in some ways some people have done a really nice job of poisoning the waters and trying to make it a billionaire versus the rest of the city. It's ugly. It's really been a disappointing discourse. This has been one of the stranger things. For years and years, people said, well, we just want to get rid of Jody Allen, right? Get us an owner. So you get a new owner who, whatever you think of him, he's been very successful in the other team that he's had. And to me, it's very similar, the situation that he took over in Carolina and the NHL and the situation he took over in Portland, right? Small market, needed a new arena, hasn't been very successful, kind of comes in, rattles some cages, and he has a very specific way of doing things, and he's been very successful, and he just won a Stanley Cup. And he came to Portland, and, the whole thing started over effing T-shirts, and it's just been spiraled, since then. And it's just
exactly.
And now you're getting into this whole arena thing, and I could go on for an hour about how dumb that argument is. And I now got people going on.
Shouldn't the public pay for that? I mean, well, I'm not trying to be weird, but like, it's supposed to be $600 million, but it's not. And the way that it's written, a whole bunch of that money comes out of player contracts and things that will be developed through events that are held there and the Blazers.
This is my simplest thing, because again, I could talk about this for hours. I'll just say this: if you think that the city should go tell that guy to go F himself and pay for the building himself, he will pack up and leave. This is one of the worst markets as far as marketing dollars and revenue in the NBA. You have a city that over the last 10 years has been desperate to attract business, and it's not going well. Commercial real estate is dying in this city. And right now you have a guy that just paid $4.5 billion to put his organization here. It's by far the most expensive operation running in the city. And you have a building that you got for free. The city didn't pay for that. The city hasn't paid to maintain it. For 30 years, you've gotten that building for free. And all the taxes and revenue that is generated out of that building, you've gotten for free. And now they sold it to you for $1. Now the city owns that. The city owns it. And whether the Blazers are here or not, they have to renovate that building.
Right.
The building's the oldest arena in the country that has not had a major facelift. It's going to have to be redone. Now you can say, I don't want to spend $600 million. I want to spend $450 million to renovate it. Okay, I'll listen to that. But you still have to renovate the building one way or another, right? So that is your responsibility to renovate it. And by the way, it's not 600 million out of the city of Portland. It's 120 million because so it's 600 million and you're paying a sixth of that. Essentially, it's 600 million and you're on the hook for 120. The state already put in their 320. The county put in the rest of whatever it is, their 80 million, and now it's your turn to put up 120. So it's 120 million, but it's 120 million for the Blazers to sign a 20-year lease, right? So that's not $120 million. That's $6 million a year. It's $6 million a year for 20 years to keep the biggest business you have in Portland. And by the way, that business generates somewhere between $500 and $600 million in taxable income every year. So do some math on that with the taxes.
It's absurd.
So you're talking about giving a group the finger to say, we're not going to do it, which would give them the opportunity to then say, okay, well, fine, I'm leaving. And you're going to be like, okay, cool. So you still have a building that you have to renovate. And over $6 million, you're willing to let how many tens of, if not hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue go into the city that generates. So like, there's no, whether you think sports is worth it or not, whether you think billionaires are bastards or not, there is in no way that anyone can make a logical argument to why this makes any sense. And by the way, then people will bring up, well, yeah, it's $6 million, but there's still $18 million a year in operating costs the city has to be on the hook for. Yes, you have to own that anyways. Even if the Blazers leave, you still have to operate that building.
You own the building.
So those costs are built in. And by the way, I don't hear one person asking the Portland Fire to kick in money to renovate that building. So why are you now going to him and saying, hey, you spent $4.5 billion? He's saying we generate hundreds of millions of dollars for the city that you guys can tax. And I spent $4.5 billion. That's my contribution. My contribution is a 20-year lease, which I would also like to point out, $6 million a year, $6 million. Do you know what the Portland city budget is for 2020? Well, I guess that would be for 2027 coming up. Do you know what the budget is? It is $8.7 billion. Okay. And we are literally getting in a pissing match and potentially, which I don't believe that, I think it's fear-mongering, but if you were to go through with this and really play chicken, you are literally taunting the biggest business. But what's another business in Portland that's worth $4.5 billion? What organization in Portland right now that if they sold for $4.5 billion, there isn't one. That's the biggest dog in town. And you're over $6 million of an $8.7 million budget. You're going to tell him to go F himself. That's what we're operating on.
I know.
I would also like to point out, the city of Portland spent $5 million last year on needles for home, $5 million. And they spent $1.9 million. By the way, these aren't made up numbers. You can look them up. They're in the budget.
Right.
So we spent, we spent almost $7 million on tents and tarps and needles. We spent more money on tarps and tents in 1 year than what it costs per year to keep the only billion-dollar industry in the city of Portland here for 20 plus years. So I don't care what side of the political spectrum on. I don't care if you hate billionaires or not. There is no argument that you can make from a dollars and cents point, because that's what people are saying is, well, he's not getting my money, right? I'm not giving a billionaire public money. And that's fine. If you want to think that, explain to me how, from a financial standpoint, if that's what this is about, explain to me how them walking out the door is financially even in the ballpark of making sense, because it does not. There is no number that you can come up with that makes sense. So, the
biggest thing is the city owns the building and it has to be renovated anyway.
Yes.
So he leaves and goes, I'm taking the Blazers. Not only do you lose all that revenue, but then you're like, hey, that taxable income that they bring in, we can no longer kind of lean on that to help pay some of that budget. And now we still kind of need that 160, except now it's 600 because we were planning on leaning on the Blazer money to help kind of pay for this. So now we need the city. You're going to pay more to renovate the building. If the Blazers leave and you pay chicken, like we're not paying for it, he has to pay for it. You're going to end up paying more to the city to fix that building and keep it full and keep it updated than if the Blazers just stay. It's the dumbest.
They'll figure it out.
It's the most disingenuous argument I've heard in this city in a really, really long time. Yeah. And that's really saying something. People are writing columns about this. People are talking about it and having seemingly, and I put this in air quotes, real conversations about this. And I kind of figured, I've listened to the show enough that I kind of know where you're going with it. I can't fathom the discourse right now that's going on around.
Well, it's not honest.
Horrible.
It's not honest
at all.
And you're whipping people into anger, and there's no, we had a city commissioner on maybe a week or two ago, and I just flat out asked her, and I kind of pushed her on some things, and she was very nice. We didn't see eye to eye on everything, but at the end of the day, she said, I got her to admit, we have to get a deal done. We know. So these people are up for election, and it's the city of Portland, and you're going to get a lot of people that don't want to give, a billionaire money. But at the end of the day, those city council people, you need about 2 of them to flip. And when push comes to shove, and Tom Dundon will push, he will. He pushed in Raleigh and it worked, and he'll push here in Portland. They are not dumb enough to slit their own throats, because if they come to this, he will call their bluff, and they're not that dumb. There's whatever you think the city council, they aren't dumb enough to slit their own throat. And this would be the definition of slitting your own throat. This is chasing nickels, ignoring dollars and chasing nickels. And so there'll be some political posturing, but at the end of the day, look, 98%, the Blazers aren't going anywhere. They'll get the deal done, and they'll sign a 20-year lease, and they're not going anywhere. They're not that dumb. I've talked to enough people that are kind of connected to this that they know. They don't. The city council can't seem like they just rolled over, if that makes sense.
Yes,
they have.
I'm just disappointed that the journalists are writing and talking about it the way they are, because like I said, I don't know all the numbers. You knew more numbers than I did, but I did a cursory glance and looked into this, just, spent an hour kind of reading different things, not opinion-based articles, but factual stuff, and was like, oh, this is something they absolutely have to do. There is no choice. Anyone who votes that you're not paying for it is a moron. It will cost the city more to keep up a building and renovate a building if the Blazers aren't there than if they are. And how much does it cost? $6 million a year for the Blazers. Over the course of 20 years, $6 million a year to keep the Blazers here for 20. I mean, it's just, it makes me, there's no good argument. There isn't. So just don't, this is what I said, I get people that come up to me all the time, and they start yelling and screaming about this. And once you actually sit down with them and and you kind of explain it, they settle down, because logic will reign supreme. You can be mad all you want, but you can't argue with numbers. Right. You can say that you don't like the fact that a guy doesn't want to renovate the building because he's rich, and why should you ask the question, why should we have to? Because that's the way it works. And if you don't do it, someone else will. And that's why the city bought the building for $1, knowing the bill would be due come renovation time.
The other ugly secret to this is this deal was already agreed upon when Tom Dundon and the group, and Shield Tile and Company, bought the team. They already were told that this deal was done. So it's the city that went back on this. The city, the county, the NBA, Tom Dundon, all of that. They all agreed that when he bought the building, this was going to be the deal. This was all worked out. And now it's not Tom Dundon that has backed out of this. It's the city that's backed out of it. So just all this stuff about he wants to leave. No, he agreed to something, and had the city held up their end, this would be done. This would be signed already, and he wouldn't be going anywhere. So there's a lot of these people in the media, and I just think it's despicable, that are trying to build this narrative that he's going to move the team because he wants to move the team, and that this has been planned all along. And it's just lies. The deal was done, and the city is the one that is backed out of it. And they will come around, and if they don't, and they are that dumb, then all bets are off the table. And that part I agree with. If you go to him and say, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah, then he's going to leave.
By every account, everyone I've talked to says that he is not a man that bluffs. And I don't think he's bluffing here. And so he says, I'm not paying for this. He means it. And he has the argument on why he shouldn't have to. So again, the city will come around. They will. They're not going anywhere.
It's just frustrating. It's been a frustrating few weeks with the Blazers. It's been a beautiful cultural melting pot of weeks with the World Cup that will continue this week. I can't believe it, but we're in a place where I think universally we're all saying "Go USA." I think for the first time in a long time. So we'll leave it there, Suke. Thank you very much, and we will be back recording in a few days.